New York City, the concrete jungle where dreams were once made. But tonight, those dreams lie crumpled in alleyways, buried beneath cardboard shelters, flickering under the dim hum of subway lights. This isn't just a story of struggle. It's a full-blown humanitarian crisis unraveling in plain sight. You've seen the skyline. You've heard the legends, but what you haven't seen is how close the Empire State has come to collapse. And it's getting worse, fast. But before moving forward, if you think New York will bounce back, hit the subscribe button and like this video. As dusk settles, the glittering towers of Manhattan cast long shadows across the city streets. In those shadows, over 146,000 people will sleep without a home. You heard that right. Nearly 150,000. Among them, children make up a staggering 48,000. Imagine that. An entire generation growing up not with bedtime stories and warm meals, but with sirens for lullabies and fast food wrappers for dinner. These aren't just statistics. These are lives unraveling in real time, and New York, the wealthiest city in America, is struggling to hold the scenes together. You don't need a data chart to feel the crisis. Just ride the subway after midnight. You'll see the shift. The usual hum of commuters replaced by the heavy silence of survival. People curled up on benches, clutching trash bags filled with all they own. A mother softly humming to calm her toddler as a train screeches by. An old man staring into nothing, his coat soaked from last night's rain. These aren't stragglers, they're survivors. And every station tells a different story, none of them with a happy ending. Walk a few blocks down any avenue and you'll see the contrast screaming at you. A woman in heels ducks into a black car outside a five-star hotel. Just yards away, a man wraps a blanket around his child beneath scaffolding, using the building's vent to stay warm. Times Square glows like a Technicolor beacon, luring tourists into its chaotic embrace. While just one block over, a line of hungry souls snakes around a church basement soup kitchen. This isn't the New York of postcards. This is a city bleeding behind bright lights. And outside the frame of media attention, there's a quiet desperation among working families who do everything right and still fall short. They clock into 2 jobs, they pay taxes, they obey laws. Yet every month, they're one car repair or misshift away from disaster. Their fridge is stocked with generics, their credit cards are maxed, and their children share one coat between them. These are the people America claims to champion. Yet in New York, they become invisible, slipping through the cracks with barely a whisper. How did it come to this? A cocktail of crisis, surging rent, evaporating affordable housing, mass layoffs, migrant surges, and an inflation rate that chews through paychecks like wildfire. Even with the city's right to shelter law, a mandate that requires shelter for everyone, the system is cracking. Shelters are overcrowded. Resources are stretched to the breaking point. Families are being turned away, and as thousands of asylum seekers pour into the city seeking refuge, the humanitarian strain intensifies. It's a perfect storm with no eye in sight. Once, Midtown was the heartbeat of commerce. Now, it feels like a ghost town wrapped in cellophane. Once thriving storefronts are boarded up. Subway cars, once symbols of motion and momentum, are now places of refuge, filled with slumped bodies, seeking warmth, safety, anonymity. Central Park, once a peaceful escape, is now an open-air encampment. Tents pepper the landscape like bruises on the city's skin. It's surreal. And yet, for so many, it's the new normal. What makes it worse is the silent apathy. The high-rises still sparkle. Rooftop bars still brim with laughter. But down below, despair grows louder. You'll find man in front of a luxury boutique, holding a sign that reads, "Once I had a future, now I just need a blanket." Right next to him, influencers take selfies with $1,000 handbags. 2 different realities, side by side, never crossing. The heartache behind these boarded-up shops and subway shelters isn't just about economics. It's about human connection breaking apart. Families are being separated as shelters divide men, women, and children. Parents are forced to choose between staying together on the streets or splitting up to get their kids indoors. That kind of trauma doesn't vanish overnight. It ripples across lifetimes. A child who sleeps on a church floor tonight could be the teenager dropping out of high school tomorrow. The erosion of security creates a domino effect that few recover from without support. Inside shelters, the situation can be just as dire. Overcrowding has turned temporary relief into chaotic uncertainty. Beds are often nothing more than mats lined up side by side, leaving no privacy, no peace. In some locations, outbreaks of lice, bed bugs, or illness are common. People report theft, harassment, and fear of violence. It's not a safe haven. It's survival in a different flavor. And once you're in the system, it's hard to get out, with long waiting lists for public housing and Section 8 vouchers frozen or delayed. The so-called path to stability becomes a dead end. Then there's the unseen toll: mental health. The psychological burden of living in crisis mode every day is crushing. Anxiety, depression, and PTSD are widespread among the unhoused population. Yet access to consistent mental health care remains elusive. The system leans on emergency responses rather than sustained healing. People are medicated, then released, only to spiral again. Without real investment in community-based mental health services, these wounds stay open, infecting every part of life, from employment to parenting. Meanwhile, the private sector, the same corporations profiting from the city's high rents and luxury developments, largely remains on the sidelines. Billions are being poured into upscale condos and high-end shopping corridors, yet basic shelter for thousands goes unmet. The skyline is getting shinier while the streets decay. What if, instead of another multi-million-dollar penthouse, developers were required to fund housing for 10 families below the poverty line? That kind of shift could start to reverse the damage. But so far, there's little incentive for the rich to share the city they helped shape. Public trust is eroding, too. Many New Yorkers feel abandoned, not just by the system, but by leadership that's slow to act and quick to politicize. Promises are made during press conferences, but visible change is rare. Temporary shelters are touted as solutions, while permanent fixes stall in bureaucracy. People aren't asking for luxury. They're asking for a fair shot. They're asking not to be forgotten, not to be pushed further to the margins while tourists and investors are treated like royalty. And yet, under all the pain and pressure, there's resilience. There are churches opening their doors after hours, feeding lines of strangers. There are volunteers offering haircuts, jackets, and job help in subway stations. There are nonprofits placing unhoused students into classrooms, one backpack at a time. These quiet heroes don't make headlines, but they remind us that New York's spirit hasn't died. It's just been buried under hardship. If that spirit is ever going to rise again, it'll need more than charity. It'll need justice. It'll need action. And it starts with us. It's not just a homelessness crisis. It's a poverty epidemic with no vaccine. Nearly 23% of New Yorkers now live below the poverty line, double the national average. That's more than 2 million people, fighting to afford food, rent, and health care. 1 in 4 children in the city live in poverty. Think about that. In a city where billionaires buy condos as investments, kids are skipping dinner because their parents had to choose between electricity and groceries. The cost of living? Unforgiving. Renting a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent area will bleed you dry. Easily $3,000 a month, sometimes more. Buying? Forget it. Unless you've got 7 figures in the bank, you're out of luck. Groceries? Insane. A gallon of milk can cost you $6. A sandwich? $15. Even a cup of coffee will shave $5 off your wallet. And that's not even touching transportation, utilities, or healthcare. For many, living in New York is no longer a dream. It's a financial nightmare. Take Sarah, recent grad, fresh out of college, optimistic and ready to tackle the world. She lands a $50,000 a year job in the city. Sounds solid, right? Until you break it down. $3,200 for rent, $500 for groceries, $200 for a Metro card, another few hundred for health insurance. By the time her paycheck clears, she's got pennies left. No savings, no cushion, no shot. Multiply her story by hundreds of thousands, and you get a generation living paycheck to paycheck in a city built on promises it can no longer keep. And then there's inflation, the invisible tax that hits the poorest the hardest. Over the past year, prices in the New York metro area rose over 5%. Shelter costs alone jumped by nearly 6%. For families already living on the edge, that $100 increase in rent is the final push into eviction. Groceries are up, gas is up, entertainment, even something as simple as a movie ticket, is becoming a luxury. It's death by 1,000 financial cuts. So what happens when a city can't afford itself? Crime starts to climb. Desperation fuels theft, fraud, and violence. In 2022, NYPD logged over 126,000 crimes, a 22% jump from the year before. Grand larcenies, property theft, and subway assaults rose sharply. Package theft became so rampant that some buildings stopped accepting deliveries altogether. People aren't stealing for thrill, they're stealing to survive. And that's the most terrifying part. This growing wave of economic desperation has triggered an exodus. The wealthy are fleeing to tax-friendly havens like Florida or Texas. Businesses are closing shop, and those left behind, they're clinging to a city that seems to have forgotten them. Storefronts that once buzzed with energy are now silent. Foot traffic has evaporated. Even the city's lifeblood, tourism, is slowly drying up as the gritty reality spills into public view. And yet, amidst all this, New York remains bound by law to shelter everyone. A noble promise, a logistical disaster. With tens of thousands of asylum seekers arriving annually, the city is scrambling to house them in hotels, school gyms, even tents. But at what cost? Funding runs low, tensions rise, and the people already struggling to survive feel their safety nets being cut to pieces. Can the spiral be stopped? That's the question burning in every borough. The answer isn't simple, but it isn't impossible either. First, New York must confront the housing monster head-on. Build more, build smarter. Reform zoning laws to allow affordable housing in affluent neighborhoods. Offer developers tax incentives to create mixed-income communities. Regulate rent hikes. Prevent landlords from price gouging tenants into homelessness. Mental health services need to be drastically expanded. Too many homeless New Yorkers suffer from untreated mental illness or addiction, trapped in a system that fails to help them heal. Without real support, shelters become revolving doors. Permanent housing must be paired with medical access, therapy, and career training. Treat the root, don't just cover the symptoms. Education is another front line. Give kids growing up in poverty a fighting chance. Invest in early learning, quality teachers, and safe schools. Introduce more trade programs, vocational training, and tech-focused paths that prepare young people for modern jobs. Break the cycle of generational poverty, not with handouts, but with opportunities. Education isn't just about classrooms. It's about the foundation of a future. In New York City's most underfunded neighborhoods, schools are battling overcrowded classrooms, outdated materials, and teacher shortages. Students walk into buildings with peeling paint and broken heating systems, while schools in wealthier zip codes boast rooftop gardens and state-of-the-art labs. This inequality in education isn't accidental, it's structural. And if we don't fix it, we'll keep failing the kids who need the most support. Every child deserves a chance to dream, but dreams don't grow where futures feel pre-decided by a zip code. One solution? Redirect city funds and private donations toward rebuilding public education, not just physically, but holistically. Invest in after-school programs, tutoring, and mentorship initiatives. Partner with tech companies to bring coding and digital literacy into low-income schools. Create scholarship pipelines that link high school students with local colleges and trade programs. And above all, listen to the communities. Ask the parents. Ask the students what they need, because they're the ones living the reality that policymakers often overlook from afar. Job training also has to evolve. The economy isn't what it used to be. Manual labor jobs are vanishing, and AI is rewriting the rules. If the city truly wants to empower its poorest residents, it must provide them the tools to adapt. That means expanding access to job retraining programs. Apprenticeships and certifications in industries are growing. Healthcare, green energy, digital media, logistics. Put job centers where they're needed most. Make training affordable or free. And ensure these programs are linked to real employment opportunities, and not just false hope. Raise wages. Expand worker protections. Offer health care that doesn't bankrupt families. Make public transportation cheaper or free for those below a certain income level. Fund community centers. Build youth programs that keep teens off the streets and teach them skills instead of survival instincts. Give people reasons to stay, not just in New York, but in life. Healthcare, too, is a silent crisis. When people can't afford preventative care, they wait until it's an emergency. They flood yards, they rack up debt, and they fall further behind. New York must invest in neighborhood clinics, mental health centers, and mobile care units that can reach vulnerable populations where they are. Telehealth options should be expanded and prescription prices regulated. Because if someone can't afford insulin or therapy, we've already failed them. Healthcare shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a lifeline. And when it comes to community infrastructure, the impact of seemingly small investments can be massive. A community center isn't just a building. It's a refuge. It's a place where a teenager can pick up a paintbrush instead of a weapon, where a single mother can access legal advice, or where a recently laid-off worker can find their next opportunity. Libraries, parks, recreation spaces, these are not luxuries. They are stabilizers. And in times of crisis, they become survival tools. When people feel like they belong somewhere, they are far more likely to fight for that place and the people in it. And for the migrant issue, there's room for compassion and order. Coordination between federal, state, and city governments is essential. Nonprofits, religious institutions, and local communities should be brought into the fold. Migrants need training, language skills, and housing assistance to integrate, not isolation in overcrowded shelters with no plan for the future. Finally, let's not forget the power of storytelling. Media plays a huge role in shaping public perception. For too long, the narrative has focused on sensationalism, on portraying poverty as personal failure rather than systemic breakdown. We need stories that humanize, that spotlight resilience, and that show what's possible when a city invests in its people. We need films, documentaries, and news coverage that inspire action, not apathy. Because when people see others fighting and winning against impossible odds, they realize that maybe, just maybe, there's still something worth fighting for. But even if all these steps are taken, there's one more battle to fight: the disappearing American dream. Because what we're seeing in New York isn't unique. It's a mirror for the nation. If the most iconic, most prosperous city in the U.S. can spiral into such desperation, what does that mean for everyone else? The dream used to be simple: work hard, live better, climb higher. But for millions, that ladder's missing half its rungs. When New York becomes unlivable for the middle class, it's not just a local failure. It's a national red flag. The story of New York's crisis is not meant to leave you in despair. It's meant to light a fire. Because behind every statistic is a face. Behind every cold sidewalk is someone's story waiting to be rewritten. Change doesn't begin with policies or promises. It begins with people caring enough to act. Whether it's voting with intention, volunteering your time, or simply choosing to see the person others ignore, your voice has weight. And right now, silence is complicity. We talk about the problems. Now let's focus on potential. The potential to build a city where housing isn't a luxury, but a right. Where kids don't skip meals so their parents can pay rent. Where shelters aren't death sentences of stagnation, but bridges to stability. Where the American dream isn't fairy tale fading into smog, but shared vision we can still rebuild. The road is hard, but it's not impassable. And the first step is admitting how broken things truly are. New York has always been a symbol of resilience. It's fought through blackouts, terror, pandemics, and economic collapse. And each time it's risen, not because of billionaires or politicians, but because of ordinary people who refuse to give up on it. That same spirit exists today, buried beneath layers of exhaustion and injustice. But it's there, and if we're willing to fight for it, really fight, New York can become the miracle it was always meant to be. So if this video moved you, don't just scroll on. Hit that like button so more people see this truth. Leave a comment. Your voice might spark someone else to act. Subscribe so you don't miss more stories that challenge comfort zones and dig into reality beneath the headlines. This channel exists to bring light where others stay silent. And together, we can make sure this city and the people in it are never forgotten again.